Strawberry Mansion is a 2021 film starring Ken Tucker Audley, who also co-directed and co-wrote it with Albert Birney. Audley plays an auditor with the federal government named James Preble in a dystopic future where even people's dreams are taxed. The year is 2035, however, time, space, and reality itself is unique to the universe within the film. It bears almost no resemblance to our world at all. The dislocation from our time and our reality gives the film a level of believability. Because the world itself is already quite absurd, the events within the film's realities are no less out of place. And I stress realities, plural. The film is an exploration of dreams primarily, however, the plot devices it uses cannot exist in a world that isn't itself already kind of bonkers. That isn't to say that the reality we exist in is any saner nor rational. I live in America after all. We have 9 people who dress themselves in wizard's robes whose authority is incapable of being challenged so long as they are living. Furthermore, the only people who seem to have power here rule entirely by superstition, asserting with absolute certainty that it is they who are the only ones capable of divining the will of an unknowable deity, whose interests seem remarkably material for an infinite being. The film starts with our protagonist, James Preble, in a kitchen that, with the exception of the room and all of its contents being the same shade of pink, is otherwise normal. He appears to be in either hunger, pain, or some combination of both. He searches in vain for something, but whatever that something is, it can't be found in any cabinet, shelf, or even the refrigerator. As he doubles over in either pain or exhaustion, the door opens. A man with an unnaturally wide smile and an amazing head of hair greets Preble with a bucket of fried chicken and a 2-liter of some red-colored soft drink. From this point, it is revealed that this is just a dream, and due to some unexplained technology, it is being recorded on a digital medium the film calls an airstick, which is not too dissimilar from a thumb drive. Every morning it seems that the citizens of this world are required to log their dreams and upload them to the government for taxation purposes. The nonchalance in which Preble uploads his dreams as a matter of his daily routine sets the baseline for how mundane the entire process is considered in this reality. As James Preble goes about his commute, he finds himself at the establishment for the bucket of fried chicken he had dreamed of the night before called Captain Kelly's. In addition to soda in the dream, Red Rocket is also purchased with his meal. The symbolism isn't subtle. A society defined by its consumption is one without any imagination. Living a life defined by what one purchases is an utterly hollow pursuit that will rob one of their creativity, and thus, rob them of one of the most essential pieces of what makes them a human being. What more is there to life than fried chicken and soda? Especially for someone like James Preble. Preble is but an instrument of the state, nothing more, nothing less. He seems to be a man without a past nor a future. It's as if he is built for the sole purpose of propping up the state and commercial endeavors within it. And when his time comes, when he inevitably is unable to serve his only function, he will be unceremoniously discarded, perhaps spending his final years just staring blankly into space between bites of Captain Kelly's fried chicken and sips of Red Rocket. However, that wouldn't be much of a story if this remained the case, would it? The inciting incident that rips Preble from his humdrum existence is an audit unlike any other. Oh, sorry. I know, all movies and stories exist specifically because they aren't a matter of routine. That's part of their appeal. That's part of what makes them compelling. Even when they are superficially routine and banal, it is usually juxtaposed against something that isn't. This is called subtext. Anyway, he arrives at what I believe is the titular Strawberry Mansion. However, it's never explicitly stated, and I'm not going to be one of those weirdos who demands all the movie titles directly reference something particular in the film. After all, it's a reasonably sized home and not a mansion, so maybe the Strawberry Mansion means something else that only the writers will ever know. Side note, in researching the term Strawberry Mansion, I found out it's also the name of an impoverished neighborhood in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I don't think this has anything to do with anything, but it is a bummer, and it's just an unfortunate reminder that we are living in a second Gilded Age. James arrives to audit Isabella Isadora, referred throughout the film as Bella at the character's insistence. And off the first moment of meeting her, we realize that Bella is every bit the manic pixie dream girl that haunted every early 2000s film about youngish love. Despite her age, she is every bit as twee and quirky as every character Zooey Deschanel has portrayed on screen. Bella has grown old, but she has never grown up. And while her childlike innocence could possibly be the result of some advanced neurodegenerative disorder, the film does not even appear to hint at that, so I don't believe that's an avenue worth exploring. But if you've ever had the misfortune of knowing and experiencing someone who suffered and succumbed or is still currently suffering from such things, I guess it always remains top of mind when you see someone of that age behaving in such a way. Anyway, what makes the audit unusual is the fact that Bella has no known tax records. She doesn't even log her dreams on the aforementioned airstick, which Preble notes is now the standard. Rather, Bella's dreams have all been logged onto an extensive library of various VHS tapes. which I find to be a rather apt comment on the intersectionality between the young, hip subcultures that are always appropriating analog technology in a vain attempt to experience a past they never lived, and the older generations who just stopped caring one day to keep up. I'll expand a little bit later on what I mean, but I think it's something worth noting. Because of the challenges presented by Bella's circumstances, James Preble begins living with her in order to complete his audit. And to note, he is very hesitant to do so, but because of the remoteness of her location, it's a convenience for him, but also the plot. The film itself is even made to appear as if it's shot on a dated medium like Super 16. However, I don't believe it to be the case, as analog and all of its processing is just far too expensive for any film on a modest budget. That's a different conversation, but I do think it's important to keep in mind that the film itself is attempting to ape a retro style of film where one of its primary plot points rests on the obsolescence of a particular medium. That being said, while the film is photographed in a particularly retro style, the film itself gives a feeling of displaced or even flattened time. The technologies in Strawberry Mansion are both modern, antiquated, and everywhere in between. The film makes use of the temporal netherworld in which it exists. The visual effects are not confined. It makes use of practical effects, CGI, and even stop motion. It actually reminded me of this Czech horror film called Little Otek in terms of combining all available options and integrating them to create a surreality that is not too uncanny, nor is it distracting. In the first audit that Preble conducts, he sees a much younger Bella, played by Grace Klawicki, standing in a field. And for those who are curious, the audits primarily consist of cataloging random items that have been dreamt about, assessing their value, and then calculating relevant tax per item. With the aid of some sort of VR technology, auditors like James Preble can insert themselves into the recorded dreams of others. It looks like this. See, the maple tree has an assessed value of $500 and a dream tax of 8 cents, while the hot air balloon has an assessed value of $35,000 with a dream tax of 52 cents. Anyway, back to the dream. And I'll remind you that because it is the dream, the logic is a little random. We see young Bella standing in a field. Then we see a man blowing a horn that beckons her. This man is revealed to be her father. We are then shown an injured buffalo lying down in the field. It's slipping further and further from the world of the living. Bella's father reaches into the animal's gaping wound. From it, he pulls a fresh dandelion. And this is where I think the main theme of the film is introduced. Bella asks her father if the buffalo is going to die. Bella's father says to her, "Nothing ever dies. All things are changing." And this is where the film gets hard to talk about. There is a plot. However, there are also aspects of it that can either be seen as linear, while some of it is actually very circular. I imagine it's up to the audience to decide what is really happening and what isn't. It gets muddled and, at times, inartful. Regardless, the film itself is visually and orally pleasing. Shout out to Dan Deacon. I still listen to tracks from Bromst every now and then. So I guess I'll address the circular aspect of the film first. Obviously, when Bella's father says, "Nothing ever dies, all things are changing," it is meant to call to aspects of physics like the conservation of mass, but also religions like Buddhism and Hinduism that utilize concepts like reincarnation as an aspect of its religion. This is further cemented by the continued use throughout the movie of Rabindranath Tagore's poem, Unending Love, which itself speaks of love through many lifetimes and many forms. This comes into focus later on when we are shown aspects of the plot being driven by actions that were framed to the audience as moments in the present. And, spoiler, Preble is able to break this cycle. But, with all that out of the way, I can address the film's more conventional aspects. After a few nights, Preble notices in one of his audits that the bucket of Captain Kelly's chicken in one of Bella's dreams is illegible. We see the bucket, but the label keeps glitching. Curious, he asks Bella about it the following dinner. She mentions quite casually that he couldn't see it because she didn't want to see it. She elaborates that her and her husband invented a special kind of sleeping cap that keeps out intrusive advertisements. And yes, it's like Futurama.
Didn't you have ads in the 20th century?
Well, sure, but not in our dreams.
It is at this moment that Preble finds out that his dreams are not quite his own, and the man who's always in them, called Buddy, played by Linus Phillips, he serves as its pitchman, hawking various products like beer, soda, chicken, and even bug spray. Bella proceeds to give Preble her dead husband's sleeping cap, and a videotape of one of her dreams that she thinks he should see. That night when Preble dreams, he's able to break free of the pink room he often finds himself in. And as he does, the walls collapse, and we see Bella's house in the distance. In the field leading to Bella's home, we see a lot of golems made of strips of magnetic tape, the innards of a VHS cassette. The following day, Preble finds Bella has passed away. Soon after, her adult son, Peter, played by Reed Birney, arrives to take care of her affairs. However, Preble informs him that the audit must be completed. With nowhere else to go, Preble seeks to continue his work. Peter and his family arrive, and for dinner they have buckets of Captain Kelly's chicken and bottles of Red Rocket, While Preble is distracted in conversation with Peter, Peter's wife and their young adult son proceed to destroy the remaining VHS tapes that have yet to be audited. This enrages Preble, who decides to continue auditing, starting with the tape that Bella handed him. It is during this audit that Preble is assaulted by Peter, and yeah, I get it. The choice to have Preble continue to audit despite seeing the family's attempt to destroy Bella's tapes is confusing. However, Preble seems to still lack any humanity. In some aspects, it makes sense that he is so hardwired and indoctrinated that he can only eat, sleep, and work. And since he isn't eating and he isn't sleeping, well... After the assault, Preble is rendered unconscious. The final act plays out in a dream, and unconscious Preble, stuck in the dream world, finds out that Peter is the CEO of Guavatron Industries, the richest advertising company in the world. Meanwhile, in reality, Peter begins to burn the house down with an incapacitated Preble still in it. As this happens, Preble lives many lives and falls in love with young Bella, loses her, and falls in love with her all over again. However, the Bella that Preble dreams of reminds him that he is indeed in mortal danger, that his body is stuck in a burning house. To regain consciousness, Preble must turn into a caterpillar, and yeah, the metaphor is pretty clear. He must be reborn to save himself from the fires of a burning building. Before he wakes, he has one final showdown with Buddy in the pink room. Buddy buries him deep in products. Bella manages to appear and dig him from the rubble and place the ad-blocking sleeping cap on him just in time. Using the cap's control, Preble is finally able to vanquish Buddy once and for all, turning his body into static before he blinks from existence with a flash. When Preble finally does wake, he manages to escape the home, only to rush back in to save Bella's pet turtle, which I didn't mention, but I also didn't mention a lot of things in this tribute movie. He also manages to save the sleeping cap and the VHS tape that Bella gave him. The final scene is Preble watching the tape in a way nicer apartment than the one we saw him in at the beginning of the movie. We see him watching himself and young Bella holding hands and walking towards the Strawberry Mansion, meaning she had dreamed of him decades before. While I do think this movie is trying very hard, there are aspects of it I do enjoy. The dream tax, I believe, is an interesting metaphor for what one sacrifices when they do put themselves out creatively to the world. There's a toll that comes to putting out a piece of art, be it embarrassment or time. And without sufficient backing, the endeavor can leave an artist in a worse position than when they started. Well, whatever. This video is long enough. I feel like I could speak at greater length about this movie, but it might end up being longer than the actual movie itself. Like and subscribe, or don't. Whatever. Do what you want.